Hello students, welcome to Recitals in Depth. Herein, we will cover the international relations August 2024 current affairs topics in detail. The broader themes which we are going to cover are as follows: important state visits, sustainable use of energy resources, global labor governance, important dialogues and mechanisms, cybersecurity and its governance, and bilateral relations. Telegram CEO was arrested in Paris. Recently, Telegram CEO Pavel Durov was arrested in Paris due to the allegations of use of the platform Telegram for illicit activities. Illicit activities leading to drug trafficking, money laundering, and distribution of child sexual abuse images. Telegram is a messaging service app and it was founded in 2013. Ideologically and financially, it is Pavel Durov who launched the Telegram. However, the technological drive was led by his brother Nikolai. Let us have a look at this issue. So now let us understand what is the origin of Telegram. How did it all begin and what was the purpose behind it? So firstly, we must know about VKontakte. Now, VKontakte is the largest social network of Russia. This was founded by the same founder of Telegram, that is Pavel Durov. Now, it went into crosshairs with the Russian government in 2011-12. This is because a mass protest for democracy was launched in Russia, and it was primarily this platform that was used to register and gain support for this kind of a protests. So, Russian government came heavily on this social network and therefore Pavel Durov had to step down. Eventually, he left this social network and went to Dubai, and in 2013, he founded Telegram. Right? Now, since he was a part of this social network and therefore he had also faced the brunt of Russian government, therefore Telegram was founded with the objective of ensuring users' privacy and also the freedom of speech and expression. So the dual purpose of Telegram in the beginning was to ensure that users have privacy when they are texting to one another or conversing over a social media platform. Also, there must be freedom of speech and expression, which is a part of democratic ideals of nations. So this is why Telegram was founded, and it was done in Dubai. Now let us move forward and understand what is the unique functionality of Telegram with this case. So firstly, it has a huge number of active users. Close to 9.5 million active users are there on Telegram. So this means that it is a large social media platform over which the messaging service is being provided through various chats. Also, there is a higher group size, that is, for Telegram, there are 2 lakh members that can be a part of a group. As compared to WhatsApp, only 1024 members can become a part of a group. What does this mean? It means that there is a greater threat of spread of misinformation due to presence of such large groups. Right? There is a threat to that, and it will also in effect threaten the sovereignty of a nation. Then end-to-end encryption. End-to-end encryption basically means that the chats between two parties can be read only by those parties. That is, there cannot be an intervening third party which can read the text message. Right? So for Telegram, this kind of end-to-end encryption is present only for secret chat. And this is not present as a default for all kinds of chat. Like we find in WhatsApp. In WhatsApp, this kind of end-to-end encryption is already enabled. It is at default mode. So WhatsApp will ensure end-to-end encryption. Now this particular feature will lead to multiple illegal activities. Right? Use of secret chat or use of intervening authorities will create mass communication which may be a threat to national security. Right? So these are some of the unique functionality of Telegram because of which it is concerning. And as far as the French investigators are also concerned, they are concerned because of its issue of hosting platforms for Islamic extremists as well as the drug traffickers. So this is the current issue with regard to functionality of Telegram. So what are the allegations against Telegram? So Western governments, as per the Western governments, the platform is less secure and there is no provision for detection of illegal content. When it comes to content, it is basically have to be moderated by the platform. That is, it has to be moderated by Telegram authorities itself. So there is also a concern by Western governments that content moderation is not there. This leads to inappropriate content being shared over this platform. Thirdly, they are unresponsive towards enforcement of laws. That is, if a platform is being registered in a country, that is, it is being allowed to operate, then it must comply with the laws, that is the digital laws or information technology law that is present in the country. If it does not do so, then its right may be revoked, right? And this is particularly the case because they have been not submitting reports when it comes to flagging of content. Right? Also, there is a case in which Germany has imposed a fine of $5 million on Telegram, citing that they don't have a mechanism in place to flag the illegal content. Also, Germany accuses that Telegram has not applied or does not have an official communication channel to stop these kind of illegal content with the respective authorities. So these are the concerns of Western government. However, Telegram says that it complies with the European Union laws. There is complete compliance. That is what Telegram authorities have said. And with respect to content moderation, they have told that there has been a continuous improvement when it comes to content moderation. Right? So these were the allegations by the Western governments and Germany also imposing a fine against Telegram, and these were the statements issued by Telegram in this regard. So what are the safeguards in India with respect to this kind of issue? Firstly, India would try to balance the issue with respect to privacy of an individual as well as regulations that are desirable for national security of India, right? Privacy should also be there. That is ensured as a fundamental right under Article 21. Also, under Article 19, we have freedom of speech and expression, freedom of association. These fundamental rights also have to be held. Also, there are reasonable restrictions, and that is where the regulations will come in. Right? These kind of fundamental rights cannot be absolute in nature. They have to be restricted when there is a threat to sovereignty and integrity of India, right? So regulations particularly to control crimes, to ensure cyber security. So let us briefly also look at which legislative act actually puts forward these kind of safeguards. This is the Information Technology Act. So under section 79 of IT Act, it says that the third party or the intermediary, that is the person or the authority which is having or hosting the social media platform, won't be liable for the messages that is being exchanged on the platform, right? Because it is not with his involvement that such kind of transmission of messages is taking place, right? So this ensures that there is privacy and also existence of such kind of platforms, so that freedom of speech and expression when it comes to doing it with a digital technology also exists. So this is an enabler of privacy. Then in 2021, there was amendment to the IT Act. It introduced a number of rules which said that the platform has to introduce some safeguards, right? This is to ensure that crimes are not there and cyber security prevails, right? So with respect to amendment, what were the rules that were made? That there must be due diligence when it comes to content moderation. It also says that there must be removal of inappropriate content. Also, the spread of misinformation must be stopped by adhering to fact-checking units for establishing the truth, right? So these are the safeguards with respect to regulations, right? Also, Supreme Court in Shreya single case, that is section 66A, ensured that a person's freedom of speech and expression is not endangered, because section 66A says that transmission of offensive information through computer or some electronic device is prohibited. And under this, it was struck down as unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So here the Supreme Court established privacy as well as freedom of speech and expression. So these are the safeguards with respect to India. Fallouts of lithium mining in Chile. Lithium has been touted as a white gold. Why? Because of its market value as well as its shiny appearance. Now there has been a global demand for this element because the countries want to transition to clean energy. They have their own mandated nationally determined contributions, because of which they want to reduce the carbon emissions of their economy. Lithium comes into the role because it helps in promoting electric vehicles and is also considered to be important when it comes to energy storage systems. Therefore, there is a global demand for lithium. However, increasing demand has led to rapid extraction in the salt flats of Chile. So it goes for a question that are we applying unsustainable means towards a sustainable goal? Let us understand this issue. So what is the significance of Atacama salt flat? So first of all, it is located in Chile and it has 33% of global reserves of lithium, right? So this would result in rapid extraction because it is being pulled up by the global demand. Global demand will amp up the process of extraction, right? And how is this extraction process detrimental to the environment? Let us understand through the extraction process itself. First of all, these reserves in Chile, that is in Atacama Salt Flat, are mainly in underground reservoirs, right? So these are in the form of brine water, that is salt water. This means that lithium is dissolved in brine water itself, and therefore there has to be continuous evaporation. So the extraction process would involve extracting the groundwater, that is from the underground reservoirs, and through multiple evaporation ponds it has to be passed, and the water has to be evaporated, leaving behind lithium, right? So this has resulted in environmental concern. One is subsidence of Earth's surface. Why? Because it has been said that this rapid extraction, this rate at which it is being extracted, is much more than rate of recharge of aquifers, right? So this has resulted in subsidence of Earth's surface. The second important thing that has happened with respect to indigenous communities, and that is that there has been water scarcity, because they are continuously extracting underground water and also going forward with its evaporation. It has affected the supplies of fresh water, that is the drinkable water for the indigenous communities, right? And it becomes important because Atacama is a desert and it is also a water scarce region, and utilizing such kind of water for processes and demand of lithium rather than for the indigenous communities raises a question on its sustainability, right? What is the issue? One, it is not conducive with social requirements of the local population, right? Secondly, it is not environmentally safe, right? Both of these are concerns, and therefore it raises a question that we are going towards achieving sustainable developmental goals. We want to achieve clean energy. However, the process that we are applying is not socially or environmentally conducive. So can we go forward with a sustainable means to attain the sustainable developmental goals? That is what this rapid demand or rapid extraction of lithium puts us as a question. Now there is again geopolitical relevance, because we have SDG goals and we have nationally determined contributions under UNFCCC, right? So it leads to expansion in demand of lithium. Right? So this is a process which will lead to expansion of demand, and therefore Atacama Salt Flat becomes all the more significant with respect to the geopolitics. That is the politics which is related to the distribution of resource, right? So what are the challenges to sustainability? First of all, there is satellite data. There has been an evidence of detriments to the environment. It has been said that there has been subsidence of Earth's surface by 1 to 2 centimeters per year in Atacama Salt Flat following this rapid extraction due to the global demand. Now it endangers SDG 6, then SDG 12, which is of responsible consumption and production. Because we are not going forward with responsible production, it is endangering the local communities and also affecting the environment. So SDG 12 is also not being met. Then SDG 14, SDG 15, and what are we pursuing? We are pursuing affordable and clean energy, and 13, climate action. right? So these are the goals that we want to achieve. This is the outcome we want to achieve by having clean energy. We want to protect our environment and attain our sustainable developmental goals. However, in this process, we are jeopardizing other sustainable developmental goals, that is clean water and sanitation for the local communities and responsible consumption and production, right? So these are the challenges to sustainability when it comes to pursuing SDG 13 and SDG 17. Now let us briefly understand the utility of lithium. In the global energy market, there has been high demand of this element. Why? First, because there is high energy density when we utilize lithium ion batteries. This means it will affect the storage potential. That is, more energy can be stored within these lithium ion batteries. The second is there is faster recharge of these batteries when we utilize lithium in it. Then there is higher cycling rates. That is, it will have a greater life. Also, it will be, even if you recharge it many number of times, then also it will be usable in the long term, right? It has a long life, right? So the combination of all of this has resulted in expanding of demand in the global energy market. Then also there is geopolitical competition. So China has moderate reserves. However, it has resulted in being the largest refining market. When it comes to lithium, right? This is something that does not sit well with United States and European Union, right? And therefore there is geopolitical competition of first having these kind of resources, then attaining it mostly from the friendlier nations. Now that the global demand of lithium is justified, let us also see where is the availability of lithium. With respect to India, recently there has been foundings in Jammu and Kashmir, in the Riyasi district, and in Karnataka, in Mandya. However, they are not much, but still there is lithium resource within India as well. Secondly, in global reserves, lithium triangle becomes important. And this is also very important with respect to your prelims preparation. So, it is called lithium triangle, which is located in South America. So, the countries are Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, right? Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile. So, these three countries account for 63% of global reserves. Of lithium, right? And Argentina, Bolivia, and Chile, right? So amongst this, Chile has maximum reserves. Bolivia, on the other hand, has the largest untapped reserves. That is, because of some technological or logistical inefficiencies, this resource is not being tapped as much as it is being tapped in Chile, right? Similarly, for Argentina, there is huge amount of reserves for lithium as well. One point that we should also understand, that Australia has the largest production, but not the maximum reserves. Maximum reserves is with Chile, but it comes second in line when it comes to production. It is mainly a point of technological efficiencies between the nations. Then China is the largest when it comes to refining process of lithium, right? So this is the availability of lithium, and with respect to India as well as the global supplies. So India will try to tread on the clean energy program of its own through attainment of lithium, both when it comes to domestic supplies or when it comes to procuring from the international market as well. Thailand's new Prime Minister. Recently, elections were held in Thailand and it resulted in electing Paetongtarn Shinawatra as the Prime Minister of the country. Now, this is a great political shift because these elections are a representation of the democratic processes that have been in conflict with the military interference of the country. Recently, therefore, Prime Minister Modi has also congratulated the newly elected Prime Minister and also said that we are going to explore the areas of cooperation between India and Thailand. Let us understand this issue. So let us understand Thailand's electoral system. So it is a bicameral legislature like India. It has two houses. One is House of Representatives. The other is Senate. House of Representatives will have 500 members and Senate will have 250 members. Right? And the process by which these members would be allowed to sit in House of Representatives or Senate, for House and Representatives, it will be elections. Now they can be of two forms. One would be first past the post and another would be through proportional lists. Right? For the Senate, however, it is not the elections by which they will be allowed to sit in the Senate. It will be through a military appointed panel. Right? So the Constitution wanted the Senate to be non-partisan. That is, they should not belong to any of the political parties and therefore there should be the Senate and it will be appointed by the panel which the military in turn appoints. And then the Prime Minister will be elected considering the vote of the members of both of these houses and he or she will be approved by Senate. Right? So this proves to be a challenge because in the whole scheme of democratic processes, there is a body that is approving the election of Prime Minister and it is particularly being done by military. That is, military is trying to exercise its influence so that the decisions of the current Prime Minister would be in its own favor. Right? So it presents a challenge to the democratic process of elections. Right? Some critics also call it as a pseudo-democracy. Pseudo-democracy, or it is also called as false democracy. Right? It is just a namesake that we are using the democratic term. However, it is being regulated by military itself. Now, how did military become so powerful? Now, in 2014, military had organized a coup against the government and it was the aunt of the present Prime Minister, that is Paetongtarn Shinawatra's aunt was ousted in this coup in 2014 and since then military has been occupying the power positions. Right? They drafted a constitution in 2017. This military based power center, they drafted a constitution in 2017 and because of this we have the bicameral legislature. Right? So this bicameral legislature has this particular feature which will lead to the continuous military influence in the democratic processes of Thailand. And this is the reason that it is being touted as a pseudo-democracy. So this is an issue with respect to Thailand's electoral system. So what are the impact of this elections? The first is the impact has to be seen with the lens that this is a young leadership. Critics have said that since the Prime Minister elected has started her political career in 2022 itself, so it remains to be seen what her stance would be and whether there would be further interest or influence by the military or not. So it can also push for democratic reforms. This leadership can do so, or there would be some conflict between the Prime Minister and the military. And this would particularly lead to political instability in the country. Right? Also, there is historic influence. That is, the present Prime Minister comes from a political background. Her father and her aunt have been previously Prime Ministers of Thailand. And that is why there is family that holds importance in Thai politics. Certainly, if they are holding a huge amount of power in Thai politics, it would result in certain opposition. Opposition comes in from both elites of the society as well as the military. So this is also a cause of concern for the present Prime Minister and how her tenure would turn out to be. Next, there is considerable military influence. Military influence comes in the form of appointment of Senate. Right? So it comes in the form of appointment of Senate, and it also undermines the principle of sovereignty with which the office of Prime Minister has to be run, and the decisions will also be carrying the influence of military decisions, so that any formal decision is collaborative and conducive and there is no conflict within the democracy itself. Then India-Thailand relations. Now India and Thailand are particularly important when it comes to their relations, because India is focusing on Asian nations and also it is a part of its Act East policy. Right? These kind of interest with respect to India are when it comes to Thailand. So this will also be affected if military dominance takes place, then there would be instability. And if democratic procedures or reforms take place, then this would lead to further enhancement of bilateral ties. Right? So this is the impact of elections, and it has to be yet to be seen with which hand the power has to be run. Now let us understand what is India's interests in Thailand. First is the strategic interest, because India follows a policy of acting eastwards, that is the Act East policy. Similarly, Thailand also has a policy of Act West. Right? So both of these have strategic interests in investing in each other's country, whether it is with respect to trade or connectivity. That is the example of India, Myanmar, Thailand trilateral highway. This is going to connect Northeast India with Southeast Asia. Right? So this is the strategic interest in Thailand. Then there are economic interests as well. Thailand is 5th largest trading partner of India in the group of nations under ASEAN. Right? So this is one of the nations through which the trade can be enhanced in the Southeast Asian nations, even without being a part of RCEP. Then there are security implications as well, because this is a nation which is close to Strait of Malacca. This is a choke point because multiple trade routes pass through this point, and it is very important for the global trade logistics, right? There are security implications as well, which India has to protect and with which India should also try to collaborate with Thailand. Now, since there is military influence in Thailand politics, it shows us the importance of having free and fair elections that are there in India. These kind of free and fair elections are constitutionally mandated through the Election Commission of India. So this tells us how important is there a constitutional mandate to have free and fair elections so that the democratic processes are not in conflict with other dominant entities in the country. Saudi Arabia's new migrant domestic workers law. Recently, Saudi Arabia has come out with a migrant domestic worker law because of it being one of the largest destinations for this kind of migrant workers. It hosts about 3.9 million such kind of migrant domestic workers that accounts for 25% of the workforce. Now, this law has come forward to address the vulnerabilities and challenges that are associated with the labor welfare. Now, this is particularly with respect to the kafala system. It is not a labor law, however, it is an immigration arrangement which is quite exploitative in nature. And due to the modernization efforts that Saudi Arabia wants to get into, it is trying to put forward such kind of laws which are conducive to the good labor practices. Let us have a look at this issue. So let us first understand what is kafala system. So it is a sponsorship system. So in this kind of a system, there are three entities. One is kafil, that is the sponsor. The second is the migrant worker. And thirdly, that is the contract period for which the migrant worker is employed. Now, why is it an issue? It becomes an issue because kafil becomes responsible for reporting to the immigration authorities. What does he report? He reports about the movement of the migrant workers, that is his entry or exit with respect to the country, right? Along with it, he will also notify the authorities with respect to transfer of employment, that is change of sponsors to the immigration authorities. Now, how does it pose a problem? Let us have a look at the issues. The first would be because it leads to confiscation of passports. So in order to restrict the movement of the migrant labor, what kafil or the sponsor would do, they are going to confiscate the passport so that their movements are restricted in and out of the country. Secondly, employment issues. So the migrant worker, it won't be possible for him to go forward for a different employer if the particular employer that he is employed under is found to be exploitative. The third thing would be it would result in somewhat forced labor conditions. So these are the issues when it comes to the immigration arrangement under the kafala system, and this has effects over the labor practices in the country. Now, the prevalence is not just limited to Saudi Arabia, it is also there in other Gulf states like Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and so on. Right? These countries also have this kind of a immigration system. Now, ILO, that is International Labour Organization, terms this as contemporary form of slavery. Right? So this immigration arrangement is called by ILO the contemporary form of slavery. So this is about the kafala system. So what are the concerns with respect to kafala system? Let us have a look. The first is exploitation. Now, for the contract, the kafil or the sponsor would pay a hefty amount. It would be anywhere close to between 2,000 to 5,000 US dollars. Right? So this means that the kafil would now treat the migrant worker as a commodity and not as a human. Right? So there will be continued exploitation at the hands of the kafil. Right? The sponsor would try to maximize his profit when he's investing a huge amount of money. Secondly, there is legal exclusion of migrant domestic workers. Legal exclusion from where? From the labor laws. Right? So only the immigration authorities are concerned right now with respect to kafala system, but within labor laws, there are legally excluded, which means there is no protection that is being provided for the migrant domestic worker. What will this lead to? It will lead to wage theft. Right? That is the amount of money that a migrant domestic worker would earn, it won't be given to him by the sponsor. Thirdly, the concern is with respect to limited freedom. This means that a migrant domestic worker is not allowed to move out of the household without the permission of the sponsor. This is because if it is so, then he would be turned to the immigration authorities by terming him absconding or hurub. Right? That he would be said to be missing from the sponsor, and therefore the immigration authorities will go forward and term him as an illegal immigrant. Thirdly, there is lack of oversight and justice. Right? That is, there are no or negligible labor inspections. So the working conditions are particularly exploitative because of lack of oversight and also mechanisms in which justice can be ensured. Now, this is why new MDW, that is Migrant Domestic Worker Law, has been put forward by Saudi Arabia. Right? So let us have some of the notable features which are included within this law. First is the working hours. It should be maximum of 10 hours per day. Like we read in the exploitation part, that the sponsor would try to maximize his profit because he had invested so much in the contract. So there is a limitation on how much can you make the domestic worker, migrant worker to work in a day. It is limited to 10 hours. Then they would be entitled to a weekly off. Right? That is 1 day off per week. Along with it, there would be prohibition of identity document confiscation, which means that confiscation of passports cannot take place. That is, the migrant domestic worker is now free to move in and out of the country. Also, there are communication rights. That is, the migrant domestic worker can now also communicate back home or with his friends and relatives back at India freely. That is, he would not require a permission from his sponsor to do so. Then, contract termination. Now, workers can terminate contracts under certain conditions without losing the entitlements. Right? It is not that their entitlements would stop. Otherwise, they would be left astray. Then, there must be compensation that must be paid for unjust termination, right? So if a sponsor removes a migrant domestic worker from his work and it is without any reason, then he should pay the migrant domestic worker some amount of compensation, right? Then annual leave, that is 1 month of paid leave, that is it should be compensated per year. The employer is also required to pay for the annual ticket home, right? That is, the employer must pay for his return ticket to home. Additionally, the law includes mandatory insurance on all MDW contracts, which means that even if it is terminated, then MDW workers are not left astray and they find some amount of money so that they are able to sustain themselves under this MDW contracts through an insurance. There's also a provision of gradual inclusion of all MDWs in the wages protection system by 2025. Now, wages protection system is for the labor that is operating within Saudi Arabia. However, the migrant domestic workers were not included within them, and this had led to wage thefts and delay in payments. Now, it has been targeted under this law that all MDWs will now be registered under the wage protection system by 2025. So what are the safeguards for Indian migrant workers? First of all, there are a huge amount of workforce for India that constitutes the migrant workers in Saudi Arabia, right? So close to 2.65 million of the workforce is Indian, and that is why India also has a system which is known as e-migrate. What e-migrate does is it provides a list of wages or minimal referral wage that must be given out to the migrant workers in their respective countries. This is according to the working conditions and the standard of living of the respective countries. With respect to Saudi Arabia, it is amounted at 33,400 rupees, right? Then insurance. Insurance is also provided for the migrant workers from India to Saudi Arabia. However, this is laden with problem because it has limited access, right? Its accessibility is limited, and that is why this insurance is not being able to claim. Therefore, this MDW law comes as a welcome step. Why? Because it is providing an insurance to the MDW contracts. Next is age and financial guarantees. This is particularly with respect to women migrant domestic workers who are more than 30 years of age. So, there has been a financial guarantee that has been given with respect to the Indian women migrant domestic workers, and it amounts to $2,500. But again, with respect to limited consular access, there has been an issue with providing of this financial guarantees. And therefore, MDW law also comes as a measure because of its provision of including them in wage protection system by 2025. So, the next is working conditions. The working conditions are exploitative. However, the consideration of new MDW law has provided that there would be 10 hours of work in a day, and in a week the worker would be entitled to 1 day off, right? And there's also provision of annual leave for the workers. Then communication barriers are also lifted by the present MDW law. That is, the communication barriers with respect to them communicating back home with their friends and relatives, they would be free to communicate. as per the new MDW law. And gradual inclusion in wage protection system is also a welcome labor reform. This will prevent all kinds of payment related issues, that is either wage theft that will lead to forced labor conditions or with respect to delay in payment. Okay, so these are the safeguards which when we are concerned about the Indian migrant workers, these safeguards are now ensured with MDW law. However, what are the potential limitations when it comes to this MDW law? First is the domestic worker sector, that is relation with respect to its diversity. The second is with respect to the large amount of workforce, right? So diversity which comes in the form of domestic sectors that they can be employed in. There are nearly 14 such domestic sectors in which the migrant domestic workers are employed. Secondly, there are genders which have to be treated differently. Particularly the males, the workforce is composed mainly of males, right? So it raises a question that such a MDW law, how can it ensure uniformity when there is so much diversity in the labor force, right? How can it ensure such kind of uniform regulations? How can it go forward and address the issues of the various 14 domestic workers sectors and the workers like males and females, right? The second is with regard to implementation challenges, right? Implementation challenges because of lack of labor inspection. Now this means that even when the law is there, how it will be implemented, it is a challenge. And there is existence of immigration arrangement as well, according to which the sponsor can still say that a person is absconding and report it to the immigration authorities. That is, there would be a resistance with respect to freedom of movement as far as the migrant domestic worker is concerned, right? So this implementational challenge will also be there. Now there is cultural resistance to reforms. Why? Because the sponsors, that is the Kafil, has recruited these migrant domestic workers at a high cost, right? So it is to be seen how they will react to such kind of MDW law, right? Also, there is lack of access to justice. Even when there is a law that is made, the enforcement has to be taken place through appropriate mechanisms of justice, and that should be made accessible. It should be inexpensive to access such kind of a justice. Now this is still a challenge. So while MDW law is a step in the right direction towards the modernization of labor laws and ensure the vulnerabilities and challenges are reduced or negligible, these kind of potential limitations are there and exist, and they also have to be weeded out. State visit of Malaysian PM to India. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim was recently invited to India in the month of August. This is significant because it was the first time that Prime Minister of India and Prime Minister of Malaysia met. This visit is also significant because it was to take stock of the enhanced strategic partnership. Enhanced strategic partnership that India and Malaysia share. It was basically to review what has happened under this partnership. So let us have a look at the key highlights of the visit. The first is strategic ties. Now, enhanced strategic partnership between India and Malaysia this was upgraded to Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. Right? India and Malaysia had undergone this enhanced strategic partnership in 2015, which was now to be upgraded. Right? So there were multiple MOUs, Memorandum of Understanding, that was signed, particularly with respect to digital technology, mobility, culture, tourism, and so on. Right? So there were these kind of MOUs that were signed between both these countries. The third highlight would be multilateral cooperation. Right? Multilateral cooperation when it comes to ASEAN. That is, India recognized that ASEAN is central with respect to the Indo-Pacific region, and it is through its own mechanisms, that is, mechanisms of ASEAN, that it wishes to grow in respect to its relation to the Southeast Asian nations. And this is also particularly important because the chair for ASEAN in 2025 will be held by Malaysia. Right? Also, another form of multilateral cooperation comes in the form of BRICS. Malaysia has requested to become a part of BRICS, that is the emerging economies of the world. Right? Now, in a multipolar world where it is being said that there would be two rival blocs when it comes to trade wars, mainly Washington versus Beijing, Malaysia wants to choose its side and go with BRICS. That is, it wants to have good faith with China. So this request of Malaysia was also supported by India in this visit. Apart from this, multilateral cooperation also comes in the form of UNSC permanent membership. Right? So Malaysia supports that even India should be part of this United Nations Security Council as a permanent member. That is, there must be veto that is given to India, considering that it holds a huge amount of population and therefore it must be represented at the highest levels. Then this visit also highlighted food security. That is, India promised to allocate 200,000 tons of rice exports to Malaysia. This is particularly to reduce the food import dependency that Malaysia has within its trade. Coming to the economic cooperation, there was review of Comprehensive Economic Cooperation Agreement. This agreement was signed between Malaysia and India in 2011. Also, when it comes to economic cooperation, it was also envisaged that there must be sectors collaboration with respect to new technologies like AI, quantum computing, and so on. Right? Providing growth for economic of both countries, it is essential that they must integrate startups. So both of these countries have went forward for collaboration and setting up of startup alliance that will collaborate to fund various startups in both India and Malaysia through Startup India and Cradle Fund of Malaysia. Right? Apart from this, there has been an establishment of Digital Council, so that seamless digital connectivity takes place between the two nations. Apart from this, there is digital financial integration. That is, the digital currency should also be collaborated as under the UPI payments and payment system of Malaysia. Right? So these are the highlights within the economic cooperation of this prime ministerial visit. With respect to cultural cooperation, there has been increase in people-to-people ties by providing for simplification of visa procedures. Apart from this, there has been a push towards educational exchanges under India's iTech program. Right? That is, India will provide for scholarship for student exchanges and close to 100 seats are being allocated towards it. Then, respecting the traditional system of medicines of India, a chair which is named as Ayurveda chair, this is being designated in the University of Tunku Abdul Rahman University. Right? Apart from this, there is Tiruvalluvar chair in University of Malaya. Right? So within this visit, we see a huge amount of cultural cooperation as well, which finds its place in the academic institutions through designating various chair as well as educational exchanges program. However, there is considerable bilateral friction that has happened from time and again between India and Malaysia. Whether it is with regard to Jammu and Kashmir reorganization or the Citizenship Amendment Bill, or with respect to the extradition of Zakir Naik. So this extradition, when India asked for it from the Malaysian government, it was denied because they said they cannot get any concrete evidence because of which they would extradite Zakir Naik. Right? So this is something which is a cause of bilateral friction. So this issue was not discussed in the visit. However, the Prime Minister of Malaysia has said that India should sort out its minority issues. While also affirming that every form of extremism and terrorism should be routed out. So these are the key highlights of the visit of Prime Minister of Malaysia. So now let us understand how has the bilateral relationship between India and Malaysia been like. First of all, we share diplomatic history from 1959 because it was in 1959 that India established its diplomatic relation with Federation of Malaya. This Federation of Malaya later transformed into the state of Malaysia. So this is the establishment year for the diplomatic relations between the countries. Second, diaspora community. There is a considerable amount of Indian origin population that lives in Malaysia. So the population amounts to 2.5 million. These many Indian origin population lives in Malaysia. And also, with respect to persons of Indian origin, this is the second largest community, that is after the United States. Moving on to the economic and commercial relations shared between India and Malaysia. With respect to Malaysia, India is its 16th largest trade partner. When it comes to India, Malaysia is the 10th largest trade partner for India. And there is huge amount of trade that goes on between these two nations that amounts to nearly $19 billion. $19 billion are something that is a huge amount between these two nations. So, with respect to imports, with respect to exports, so with respect to imports, the trade is of $12 billion. With respect to exports from India to Malaysia, it is $7 billion. Right? So it is clearly that the trade imbalance is there. Right? Mostly the exports take in the form of export of iron and steel or textiles, while the imports are mainly in the form of palm oil. So this is the bilateral relationship. Now with respect to investments. So Malaysia is the 31st largest investor. This means the bilateral relationships can go forward, and with respect to the investments, there must be more FDI inflows as far as Malaysia is concerned. Okay, so up till September 2023, only $1.18 billion worth of FDI was coming from Malaysia. As far as Indian companies are concerned, how much of FDI they were providing to Malaysia? There were $2.62 billion Indian companies that operated in Malaysia. Right? And that is why there is also a review of comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, because this CECA is particularly in respect to the goods, services and investments. So the review has to take place so that this kind of economic, commercial and investments cooperation can be further established and strengthened. Right? Then there is defense and security cooperation. So particularly through Lima, which is an exhibition of maritime and aerospace strengths. Also, Malaysia was a part of Milan exercise that happened in February 2024 in India. It was one of the participating countries in this military exercise. So these are the bilateral relationship between India and Malaysia. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Poland. This visit is particularly significant because this is the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister in the last 45 years to Poland. The second significance is that India and Poland are also celebrating the 70th anniversary of establishment of their diplomatic relations. So what are the key highlights of this visit? The first is tribute to memorials. First being tribute to Dobry Maharaj Memorial in Warsaw. This is particularly for Jam Sahib of Navanagar in Gujarat. So this particular memorial was established in October 2014. This was because Jam Sahib's contribution to humanitarian efforts during the World War II times. that is by providing refuge to the Polish people, led to establishment of this kind of memorial, right? So a tribute was paid to this, and Dobry basically means good, that is the good Maharaj Memorial in Warsaw. The second was a tribute was also paid to Valivad Kolhapur camp. So this is with respect to Maharashtra. So Valivad is the name of the village. So this village was famous for providing again refuge to the Polish women as well as children during the World War II times, and this was also paid a tribute to. Tribute was also paid for the World War II troops, in which the soldiers of India and Poland participated and fought side by side. So this is also the historical significance of the diplomatic relations or the bilateral relations that is shared between India and Poland. Then India and Poland share a strategic partnership as per this visit. Okay. Now they have established this strategic partnership. They have also established 5-year plan of action that is to take place from 2024 to 2028. Right? Also, Poland supports India-European Union trade. It says that it will hope for quick resolution and negotiations should lead to conclusion and establishment of the bilateral trade between India and the European Union. Presently, it has been going under the negotiations for a long period of time. It has been more than 15-16 years since the India-EU trade negotiations had started taking place. Right now, they are marred by two concerns. One is carbon border adjustment mechanism, that is a barrier to trade for India, because it will place an 20 to 35% increase in tariffs on Indian products, right? This means Indian products would be more difficult to be sold in the markets of European Union. This is particularly because European Union has committed to clean energy, and therefore it wants that there should be no outside use of products that increase carbon dioxide equivalent in the atmosphere, right? Apart from this, there is a concern because of deforestation regulations that is put forward by European Union, which means that no products would be entering the European Union market, which lead to massive deforestation. This kind of a regulation is going to particularly lead to a loss of products worth $1 billion for India, right? So these are the negotiations which are at the hotspot at present. Then comes India-EU Trade and Technology Council. Now this council was launched in 2022. However, the operationalization has to take place, right? So Poland says that there must be a support with respect to the operationalization of Trade and Technology Council as soon as possible. So they have joint working groups in various sectors. One could be in strategic sector, the other is in green tech, and the third is in trade and creating resilient value chains, right? Which means that there must be continuous addition of value and it should be resilient. That is, there must not be any event that should disrupt it to an extent that there is a disruption in global supply of the products, right? Then Poland also wants to promote India-EU connectivity. That is connectivity with respect to digital connectivity, with respect to people connectivity, transport, energy. So besides these areas of connectivity, there is also a proposition of expanding it to the third country or the regional connectivity as well. Beyond that, there is connectivity with respect to the private sectors of the respective countries. Right? So these are the key highlights of the visit. Further in this visit, there were economic and commercial relations also highlighted. This visit pushed forward for private sector involvement in industries like food processing, urban infrastructure, and so on. India has also invited the Polish companies to make in India and make for the world. That is, to promote the investments of Polish companies within India. Then, social security agreement was also a highlight of this visit because it focused upon mobility of the workers and ensuring that their welfare is made the priority, right, with respect to social security of the workers. Then there is defense cooperation, in which both the countries have gone forward and said that there must be efforts put in for modernization of their defense equipments, right? So there must be modernization, and this must be taken through the mechanisms established like the joint groups between the two nations. So this defense cooperation was also a highlight of this visit. One more important, very important significance of this visit is that Poland is the president for European Union for the year 2025, and therefore India wants to establish good relations with Poland and also subsequently European Union. So these were the key highlights of the visit. Now let us quickly have a look at the bilateral relations between India and Poland. So background mainly comes in the form of relations and humanitarian contributions during the times of World War II. Then in 1954, Poland opened an embassy in New Delhi, while India opened an embassy in Warsaw in 1957. So this led to establishment of diplomatic relations between the two countries. This is how we have 70 years of diplomatic relations at present, and this is also important significance of this visit of the Prime Minister. Then what are the economic and commercial relations? With respect to trade, Poland is the largest trade partner when it comes to Central and Eastern Europe. Right? And between 2013 to 23, this trade has seen a rise of about 192%. Right? This is presently at $5.75 billion. So this is the bilateral trade between India and Poland. With respect to investments, India and Poland. So India has invested $3 billion, while Poland has invested approximately $650 million for India, right? Then with respect to sectoral collaboration, that is, where are these trade specific to? The first is chemical industry. Poland is a net importer of chemicals, and one of the top 5 exports from India is from the chemicals industry itself. The lead being organic chemicals. Then the top exporter item from India to Poland is textiles. Right? So sectoral collaboration takes place in these two, and then there is third, that is clean coal technology. So Polish PSUs are particularly famous for having these technologies, and they have also been providing for training to the Coal India Limited employees for intelligent mining under this clean coal technology aspects as well. So these are the sectoral collaborations between both of these countries. Then cultural relations, particularly by paying a tribute and by commemorating the contributions of Jam Sahib and also plaque for the Waliwad Kolhapur camp. So Poland recognizes that India historically has helped Polish citizens as well, and therefore it wants to respect by highlighting these cultural relations between India and Poland.